So it's been a hot second. I haven't recorded a video in about 2 weeks, so here goes nothing. Trying to remember how to talk to a camera. This is the fifth of the Penguin Mon series, Akutagawa and Others, free Japanese short stories. Now, I have so many issues just with this from the get-go. Free Japanese short stories, like, it just sounds almost racist just to be like, these are Japanese short stories. Akutagawa and Others. So Akutagawa was the last author of the free, and I'll show you the free here. These are the stories. So it's the last story, and it's also the story which I don't think fits this collection, and really 1 star, like I just didn't even get it. Like, and I don't think it's because it's bad translation. I think it's just culturally just out of touch with like a Western readership. I don't think it's been given enough introduction for us to understand it. One thing you should know about these Penguin Mons is that there's never an introduction or a translator's note, which is hugely helpful when it's like the only time you want to read the beginning before you start a book, when you read a translation, because it just gives so much more perspective that you just will miss if you just read it straight up like I have. The quote here is, "How much fun are you getting out of life?" which doesn't really bode well for how much this book is as an enjoyment experience. It just was okay. But saying all this, the first 2 stories, which are very similar, they're actually not bad. Like they're okay. They are passable. It's more the content that is just technically not that appealing to me, and I think a lot of people won't find that enjoyable. So let's talk about the stories. So the first story, Behind the Prison by Nagai Kafu, it's written like a letter. It says, "My dearest Excellency." So I guess it's like an epistolary short story, and it's about a 30-year-old ex-student who's moved back to Japan and feels trapped. And here's a quote from the first page. "I am a full 30 years old now, but far from being prepared to start my own family, I continue to while away my days in a single room on my father's estate, which is located behind the prison in Ichigaya." So Behind the Prison is about someone coming back with all this culture from their studies abroad. In particular, he references a lot of French culture, saying he's talking about the poems of Verlaine or Mallarmé, talking about Marseille and the Internationale. Like, it almost reads a little bit like Proust. Like, you can see the French influence of modernist writing at this time, as in Proust's overly descriptive style, heavily abstract and intellectual. You can see it here, and I almost see a parallel between Japanese and French culture in that they do really like very descriptive, imaginative, abstract content, not only in books but in other forms of media. And it really shows when reading this, and this was the most likable of the 3 stories. It does really, I guess it hit home a little bit for me because I also have recently returned from being in Canada as an international student, and I get the whole feeling of being like trapped, like that period everyone in their 20s has gone through where they've kind of had to go home to their parents to live for a while, or like they were suddenly doing something and then it stopped. This story gets across that feeling of feeling trapped. So it's okay. It's the prose is a little bit too descriptive. Not very much goes on in this story. It's literally him describing what he can see from his room and what he wishes he could do. And it's hard to really enjoy these stories because, for example, the characters, they're not helping themselves. These Japanese short stories just are about men who aren't helping themselves, and it's hard to really enjoy it. It's kind of, it goes to the point where it's kind of just a little bit annoying. It's like a little too it's a little too, what's the word? It's just a little too pitiful. Like, when pity turns to annoyance, it's in these Japanese short stories. For example, it says, I turned to my father and said, there is nothing for me to do in this world. Please think of me as mad or crippled and do not press me to live up to normal worldly expectations. It's like he didn't think that any profession would be fulfilling for him, so he chooses to do nothing, and then he feels alone because of it. And it's just a bit like, well, yeah, I mean, the second story, Closet LLB by Uno Koji, is a very similar story, except here we have a student, Sansaku, talking about how he's got a bachelor's of law degree, so he puts LLB after his name. But at the same time, he's stuck in a boarding house and reliant on his family for money. He doesn't know what to do with his life. Again, it's a very similar story. And getting this far into the collection, I saw, okay, here's the trend. This is the modernist Japanese writing they wanted to show us with this collection. But I just don't know what this story adds over the first one, and it's just a little bit stranger because it's called Closet LLB, because this guy for some reason likes going into the closet and looking at people on the streets. He likes to feel completely invisible. But it's, again, pity turns to annoyance when at the end it's just talking about how he relies on other people. He can't pay his rent. Like he relies on other people to support him, and at the same time refuses to see that he is capable of doing many things. It's like a laziness. It is an anti-hero writing, but there's just not enough balance to it. It's like complete denial. And the third story, General Kim by Akutagawa Ryonosuke. That's probably not right, but that's my best attempt. I literally cannot tell you too much about this. It's about two emperors and one kills the other, kind of, and it's a bit of a legend. But the ending of the story is pretty strong. I mean, I'll read you half a line. It says, to any nation's people, their history is glorious. The legend of General Kim is by no means the only one worth a laugh. The idea behind this third story is about how stories of military history or about demons in Japanese culture are often fabricated in a way which makes the culture seem strong, like the history is written by those who win. This story is trying to say that the way that we think of each other's cultures is distorted by us wanting to seem like we won the battles. But I really don't understand how this fits with the first two stories. This story is far out of sync with the other two stories, and it's also just doesn't have enough cultural context to really make sense to most readers. I don't think anyone is going to remember the Akutagawa story. It's almost like maybe they chose his name so that you remember that he was in this collection. The reason I'm just kind of a bit like frustrated with this collection is because there are other Japanese writers from the modernist era they could have chose, which would have just been more enjoyable. And also, Penguin 43, we already have another Japanese author, so it's a bit like we got 3 Japanese short stories and 1 more Japanese short story. It's not so much that I'm saying Japan is overrepresented. It's just like, why would you do it like this? Why would you arrange it like this? It's almost like they had this and they thought that's not enough Japanese short story authors. Maybe we'll just add 3. It just seems lazy. That Penguin Modern number 5 seems lazy. I would skip it, and like the blurb is so incorrect. Free, beguiling, no. Strange, not at all. Funny, absolutely not. There's nothing funny about anything in this book. Hair raising, again, nothing. There's just guys sitting in their room talking about themselves. Tales of imprisonment, not really. Everyone's living in a house. Memory, yeah, okay, there's a lot of memory in this. And atrocity, no, like nothing happens. From early 20th century Japan. Like, I don't think they know I'll go so far as to say I don't think they know what they put into this. This is a lazy, sloppy effort. I would give this 2 stars for it just being the first story is quite nice. The story behind the prison by Nagai Kafu was quite a nice read. Its prose was quite nice. The content wasn't that appealing, but it was clearly very well written. I don't doubt the first 2 authors are enjoyable to read in translations even. It's just that as a set of 3 short stories, none of them are enjoyable enough to encourage me to really want to read them as authors. There are better Japanese monist authors that aren't here, and I just don't know why they put it in such a I don't know why they put it in like this. But that's just my opinion. Maybe Japanese readers aren't too bothered about the way that modernist Japanese authors are represented here, but to me it just seems like this isn't really going to resonate with anyone. It's kind of doesn't achieve what I think it was meant to achieve. So yeah, that's that. So I'd probably skip this one, but don't worry, there are plenty of other amazing Penguin ones coming soon. Happy reading.